I'm Ian Curry, this is Chasing Cars, and it has been 15 long years since we've had a new generation Toyota Land Cruiser Prado. But here it is, the 250 series in all its boxy glory. We're here in Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory, the most Aussie of settings for this most Aussie of SUVs. And there has been so much interest around this car. We've been told some 17,000 have sold ahead of them being in the showrooms. That's how much Australians love and respect this Prado. There are 5 variants going on sale from launch, starting from $79,000 to drive away. That is about 10 grand more than it used to be to get into the outgoing Prado. But you're after a much more sophisticated, advanced machine. So that 79 grand drive away, that's for the entry-level GX, and that's your fleet special. That's only a 5-seater and has basic things like a urethane steering wheel and cloth seats. So this one in front of me, this is the GXL. This is about $86,000 to drive away. This is going to be the volume seller. They're expecting roughly 50% of all sales will be for this one. And that's because it has 7 seats, the sort that many families are going to want, and it does have a leather accented interior as well. There's a mid-spec VX, and then there is an off-road specific Altitude. That's about $100,000 to drive away. That's got some tasty off-road kit unique to that model. And then of course the range topper, the Kakadu, that's about 108 grand to drive away, so not exactly cheap, but that is the full fruit special one, and perfectly placed, you'd say, for our location here in Kakadu. Okay, we're going to be taking these things on-road, off-road as much as we can. I'll be showing you around it and through it, so let's get started.
Chasing Cars. Honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
It's a completely different styling at the front end, isn't it? There's real classic Land Cruiser FJ40 vibes going on here. There's the big Toyota font in the grille, and of course these very squared off LED lights. Unfortunately, none of the round headlights. That's for the American market. We have asked Toyota Australia. They said they will consider it in future, depending on feedback from customers. So get badgering them, because it would be awesome to have those front lights, wouldn't it? So the Altitude grade, that gets a color-coded bull bar, and you can get that as a genuine accessory. I believe you can get it color-coded as well, which would look pretty fantastic on the front of these. Just go down the side. So these are like a dark grey 18-inch rim. That's standard on GXL. And I just want you to have a look at the windscreen, how upright it is. That's, again, quite an old school thing. And also a lower belt line down the side. So these windows are much bigger than the old Prado. So the visibility inside is actually much better than before. Pretty huge side mirrors on the new Prado. Get these side steps as well. And just check out these trapezoidal wheel arches, and as you can see, we've done some pretty hardcore off-roading, and this is to dissipate all the mud properly, to prevent build-up that you get with more of the circular wheel arch. And this is a bone of contention for many owners. We're now starting to use AdBlu in this new Prado. Normal diesel fuel filler, but you're going to have to keep your eye on this, because the service intervals are every 6 months or 10,000 kilometers. We've done a few sums, and we believe the AdBlu will probably need refilled at about 8,500 kilometers. So it's a bit of an inconvenience, but it's very important to have it, of course. But we're promised that you do get plenty of warning on the dashboard to tell you need to top up the AdBlu. But I have been reading some of your comments, and I have seen that many people are put off by the fact that this vehicle does now need AdBlu. Considering the front end of this thing, the back end's actually a little bit plain. When I was following it earlier, it certainly looked quite Jeepish, but it's an attractive thing. It retains that boxiness. Of course, if you're used to the old Prado with its now very old design, that had the spare wheel mounted on the boot. So that's all gone now. Your spare is underneath, which has eaten into your fuel capacity as well. Only 110 litres now on this Prado, which is again another bone of contention amongst hardcore owners. Just want to have a look at the pre-ready here for the tow bar. Tow rating has gone up on new Prado 250. It's now 3,500 kilograms, up from the old 3,000 kilograms. That's excellent. Little button here opens your glass. Just pop that open for easier access. And because this is the GXL, auto tailgate, I hope. There it goes. That doesn't come with the entry-level GX, so that's a nice thing to have, because it is a pretty big tailgate. All right, let's have a quick look inside. The Prado's boot. Now, this has been another aspect that has had a lot of online comments, many people suggesting Toyota hasn't done as good a job as Lexus has with its variant in a clever use of space. So just want to show you, this being the 7-seat version, we've got just under 200 litres behind the third row of seats, and they've put this box in which has a maximum weight of 60 kilograms. The box does come out, and if I fold these two rearmost seats down, There we go. So with those down, you've got 900 litres plus in there, which is a pretty sizable boot. But the problem is, with that middle row of seats, if you move that forward for more storage, the kind of space is all over the place. We've got lots of holes that your kit could fall into. So you need to package it clever, I'd imagine, for your off-road trips. It would need some working out what would be the best way to use this boot. So it's maybe one thing we have to have as a bit of work in progress, but yeah, I would be keen to live with one of these for a week to see how it's actually going to work in the real world. Just a couple of things I want to show you now. The previous Prado, there were a few complaints from owners about how much dust can get in. Now that's being a little bit unfair on Toyota, because in Australia we have some very, very fine dust, so it will get in. But after the drives here, we have noticed there's been very, very little that gets in. It doesn't smell dusty, certainly not dust on the surfaces, so great credit there. I just want to show you, if I pop the glass there, how well that's all been kept out. There's no sign of any redness. See, look how red it is up on the top, but nothing on that rubber whatsoever until I've just fingerprinted it. The other thing I want to show you is, if you are still a man who's about to go to work with his leather bag, you can quickly pop that glass window and then just pop your thing in there, just for easy access. Now, it's when you travel and you've got lots of luggage, keeping the readily accessible things there is so important. Really good to have that glass there. And so for those that are lamenting the loss of the spare wheel on the boot, don't worry, there's also that sort of practicality that comes with that. You'll have to forgive me first of all, because I'm sitting in a very hot interior. It's 40 degrees outside, so I might be sweating all over this new Prado's interior. Now, I must say, part of my research for this, I hopped into a previous gen Prado to give it a good test, and it feels like an antique actually compared to this. It's still your usual Toyota, very sensible, very smart layout with easy use buttons. There's nothing fancy about using the ventilation through the screen like you can do in other vehicles. Right, so the entry-level GX, that has very basic urethane steering wheel, quite nice comfortable seats, but they are cloth and manual. Whereas this one is the GXL. Of course, like I said, this is the one that families are going to buy, and it does bring things like your leather steering wheel. These are leather accented seats, but they are heated and ventilated as well. I think that's a really important point. And then just going through wireless phone charging in this grade as well. I've still only got a 7-inch driver display in front of me, but it's very clear and easy to operate. And then a big 12.3-inch screen in the center for all my infotainment. There's also wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto in these things. This being the 3-row Prado, it has 7 USB-C ports, one for every occupant. There's also an HDMI cable up front. And because of that clever hybrid system, it also affords a proper domestic socket power point into the boot, which is very useful for charging things like your electric bike, a small fridge, laptop, even a coffee machine, that sort of thing. Now, from our driving experience, these seats are fantastic. I've had a good 5 or 6 hours in the saddle with no ill effects. There's maybe, if there's one complaint, there's not quite enough support under my knees for the seat base, but for the actual general comfort, absolutely spot on from Toyota, as we'd expect. Low down in these doors, there's some pretty cheap, scratchy feeling plastic, you know, which you might not like paying this much for a car, but everything else is spot on. Through the dashboard, really nice soft plastics, good knee pads down here for the off-roading that we've been doing. Been smashing our knees against that, and it's been pretty soft. So there is a good level of quality throughout that. I just want to also pay credit to the simplicity of the steering wheel buttons. They're proper good pokey buttons on the steering wheel of this new Prado, so great job there by Toyota. Being a bigger car with a longer wheelbase, there is more legroom than has gone before in the old 150 Prado. So just sat in the back here, I do have pretty good space. My headroom's fantastic, legroom's great. Front of the driver, which these things move forward electrically, and I've got a little handle down here and I'm able to recline. There's a really decent recline, as you can see there, so you're going to travel in pretty good luxury back here. Also individual climate control through the center, coming through these vents up top as well, and there's your pair of USB-C ports for the kids to plug in their devices as they're traveling along. Okay, the all-important third row. Right, for perspective, I'm a 6-footer, so someone my size wouldn't often be riding back here. You'd imagine it would be the kids. My head isn't quite on the ceiling, so fair play to Toyota there. And my legroom is tolerable, if not particularly comfortable. These middle row seats, they aren't sliding on runners, like we see with so many SUVs these days, which does take away some of the versatility. But I suppose you still can do the recline back and forth, so it depends how much that middle row wants to be generous to you. But yeah, not exactly hard done by here. These seats are still pretty soft, the base and the back. Got a nice big armrest in the center, a couple of cup holders and the USB-C ports as well. So pretty good place to ride in the back, and this is the reason why you'd get this grade, is for this third row of seats. This new Prado is built on the same platform as the Land Cruiser 300 series, and that was very deliberate because they wanted to give it the same off-road credentials as the Land Cruiser 300, but still with the on-road niceness, if you will, of the traditional Prado. That's why people flock to the Prado, especially if you're going to be using it not just for a bit of off-roading, but of course for around town, your daily duties, all that sort of stuff. And I must say, after now we've had 2 solid days of driving here in Kakadu, it's such a job well done. I had a quick go in a Land Cruiser 300 just for comparison, and it is night and day. The Land Cruiser 300, of course, exceptionally capable, but with this new Prado, you can tell it's not as soft. It's just got so much more control and just feels like the sort of car that you'd want to live with every day. And also that slightly bit smaller than a Land Cruiser 300, so easier to live with in the city as well. And the sort of speed I'm going at now, that is going to be very typical of how many Prado owners will be using it. It's going to be your drop off at school car, get to work car, cruising on the highway, going through cities, and then maybe on the weekends you'll be out adventuring in it. But just through town, just going the slower speeds, there is lovely control. I've just gone over a few speed bumps as well, and you can feel how settled it is, how nicely it absorbs the bumps. No, it's not going to be as comfortable and as dynamic, let's say, as a monocoque SUV. It's still a ladder frame chassis vehicle, but you know, at times I'm really struggling to feel that. It is a lovely smooth riding thing, and yeah, it's leaned a little bit round the roundabouts in corners and everything, but that's just there because of course how capable this is going to be off-road. So one thing I've really noticed over the drive is, and compared to the old Prado, which I familiarized myself with before coming on this trip, is how good this steering is. So they've left behind the hydraulic steering. We've now got electric power steering, and whereas some people might not be incredibly enthusiastic about that change, it works fantastically. You know, don't make an opinion on that until you drive this thing. We've been plowing through off-road trails, proper tough stuff, the high speed stuff with undulations and big bumps and everything, and I've just felt the steering has some lovely weight to it the quicker you go. And just at slow speed like this, it is so light, it's so easy to maneuver, which is going to make in town and slow speed stuff so much better. But when you build up the speed, the steering noticeably stiffens up. It really does. And the control you can feel through the front end, it really does go where you point it, which is unusual for a car of this size and capability. And so many Australians, especially rural Australians, will be driving on roads just like this in a Prado. And it's just mopping up these bumps, and I'm just flinging it through, and the control feels great. I mean, certainly you can feel how easy the steering is through there. You've maybe lost a bit of control through there, but just in terms of how this big thing changes direction, it's fantastic. It's 2.5 tons, these things, and even heavier when you're in the Kakadu grade like I am now. And you can go through all the specifications of the new Prado. We've done numerous stories on Chasing Cars about what's included in every grade, what they feature. I suggest you have a good look through there and see which one offers which. But what I want to tell you about is just what I'm feeling driving this thing, because with 17,000 people have ordered one of these Prados without even seeing it in the metal, let alone driving it. But I can tell you, if you are one of those 17,000 that has pre-ordered one of these things, you are not going to be disappointed. It is more capable than the old one. It's certainly more comfortable. It is a night and day driving experience. It feels so much more mature, so much easier to live with. Another noticeable improvement is just how good the visibility is. I know I mentioned it when I did the walk around, but I can perch myself up pretty high. Of course, lots of electric operation in this Kakadu, but certainly these side windows, when we've been doing off-road, you can keep a very careful eye on what's going on to the side of you. And this upright windscreen and these not in especially huge A-pillars as well, so the visibility is really, really strong in here. That's backed up with my camera views as well. I've been very, very impressed with how I can just filter through these cameras. I've got wide angle, I've got overhead bird's eye view, and I can just scroll through, and there's even the feature where it's read the road in front and it paints a picture of what's happening underneath the car. That's so important to check you're not going to hit any obstacles that are underneath the vehicle. And then these side view cameras as well, they show what's going on each flank. Also make sure you're not going to bump into anything and damage what is your very expensive Prado. This being the Kakadu model, it comes with adaptive variable suspension. The lesser grades don't feature that, and I must say we've had a reasonable drive in each of them, and even though of course it's lovely to have the adaptable variable suspension, it's not a deal breaker for me. I was perfectly comfortable in the entry-level ones. They still seem to ride really quite well, and I'm just going to hop onto a bit of bitumen because this is going to be bread and butter stuff for this vehicle. And it's not quite the ride quality, let's say, of a Toyota Kluger, but if you look to this vehicle's chief rivals that are a bit cheaper, let's say like the Ford Everest or the Isuzu MU-X, it does seem to handle these bitumen bumps quite a bit better. I've got a lovely smooth ride, certainly jitters along on occasion on a few bumps on this bit of road, but really that's nitpicking it. It's a fantastic thing to cruise along in. One thing that does surprise me is with the windscreen that's so high up and these pretty massive side mirrors, I'm not getting too much wind noise at all. And this being the Northern Territory, we've been able to pile along at 130 kilometers an hour. That's been the speed limit up here, and there's been very little noise coming off the road, wind noise either. So deeply impressive. If you're in the saddle for many hours, you'd imagine that too much noise is going to be incredibly distracting and annoying and tiresome. So again, great credit to Toyota. They've insulated this car fantastically. While I'm singing this car's praises, I must also note that it's 39 degrees outside and the air conditioning is fantastic, absolutely brilliant. So whatever they've done, they know exactly where this car is going to be used and the need to keep the occupants nice and cool, and what a cracking job. I'm actually getting a little bit chilly. These new Prados are full-time four-wheel drive, so there's no fussing between 2 high and 4 high. It's just going to be always there in four-wheel drive. And the toggle into low range, that's been absolutely effortless. No nasty clunking noises, anything like that. It's just slipped in very easy once you're in neutral. Center diff lock, that's standard on all the new Prados. It's only when you go into altitude you get that locking rear differential as well. Let's talk engine then. It's no great surprise that Toyota has stuck with its tried, tested and trusted 2.8 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder. Gives up 150 kilowatts and 500 newton meters, but it does come with 48 volt tech, so very mild hybrid, these things, just like you'll get in the new Hilux. That returns 7.6 litres per 100 kilometres. On our test, we've been seeing mid-8s, cruising at highway speed, and then off-road, we were seeing just over 10, so no disgrace there whatsoever. But what I've noticed is with the new 8-speed auto transmission, it just feels like the hybridization just fills in some of the gaps when it comes to changing gears. So there's less lag, just feels that little bit more responsive, and we're told that 25% improvement in response over the old 6-speed auto gearbox in the old Prado. The higher grades, they also have lots of drive modes that you can filter through. This being the Kakadu, I've got a custom mode, Eco Comfort, Sport S and Sport S Plus. So I'll just move it into Sport S Plus. I've given it a try already, and you're not going to be expecting fireworks exactly. Maybe speeds up the response a tiny bit, but it's absolutely not a firecracker of an engine. And certainly those that were hoping for a proper hybrid, that's still not on the cards for Toyota Australia. Of course, America has the petrol hybrid. We haven't got it here yet. I know a lot of people would like it, but we'll just have to wait and see if the response is enough and the demand is there that people would actually want it. It would be nice to have it, and maybe Toyota's going to have to move to that for NVES figures going forward to reduce the emissions and the fuel consumption. But really, it's a motor that it's tried and tested. It's absolutely well suited to this vehicle. It's hard to argue against it. It's performing exactly as intended. No great surprises, no great joy when it comes to acceleration or sort of muscly feel, but you just know it's the correct engine for this vehicle right now. For those wanting to take their Prado on deep adventuring, Toyota says this new Prado has greater suspension travel than previously. In fact, the same as the Prado that was fitted with the KDSS suspension off before. Of course, that's now gone. No complaints as far as I'm concerned. We've been doing some pretty gnarly off-road stuff, some climbs over rocks, some seriously deep uphills and downhills and river crossings. And the car's been very, very fuss-free. We even tried ascending a pretty steep rocky path just with the central diff lock on and just in four-wheel drive high range. And what gets me with so many four-wheel drives, but this Prado especially, is just how easy it is. It's so capable, and it does it in silence as well. There's no nasty graunching sound. We also found that at high speed, when the traction control does kick in a little bit on the loose surfaces, there's no nasty noises there either. It's a very relaxed and calm, and it gives you loads of confidence in this vehicle to push it along, hustle it along on a dirt road. If you're out for a full day's travel adventuring deep into the bush, you're going to be wanting to carry up with some serious speed. So it gives you the confidence to do that you feel like the Prado's on your side and isn't going to be slipping all over the place. It is a relaxing thing to move along in. There's a multi-terrain select button, which I'll just go into now because we've moved on to dirt road, and I have the option of deep snow, mud, sand, dirt and auto. So I'll just shift it into dirt, and that's just gonna sort out all my electronic brain settings to make sure the torque goes to the right place and make sure I don't spin it up too much. It knows that I'm on loose dirt ground like this, and I must say it's a comfy. I'm just going to hit that. There's a serious muddy bump going through there, and it is just so secure, so confidence inspiring. And again, just boosted the speed there. I've just felt the steering tighten up, giving me more of that control, and the response is pretty impressive. It really is. And you don't mind throwing this thing around. It's one of those vehicles that, despite weighing over 2.5 tons and being almost 5 meters long, you really can throw it around pretty well. Not quite like a little Suzuki Jimny. There's some pretty good bounces along here, and it is just coping magnificently. We are flying along. It's such a competent car. I know I've said it a lot already, but they've absolutely nailed it, haven't they, Toyota? Anyone that's going to get one of these for serious off-roading, you're not going to be disappointed. It really is a hell of a unit. Toyota's engineers have told us it's a stiffer body, a more rigid frame, and it absolutely feels like it. This is a much less agricultural feeling vehicle than the old Prado. It really is a superb all-rounder in that regard. As for which grade you should pick, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I did some serious wheel time in the entry-level GX with its cloth seats, and out here where it's nudging 40 degrees, I must say they're pretty comfortable to get into and will make a lot of sense for a lot of people. But there is that element of luxury now for these Prados, and as soon as you get into anything with even with its leather accent or the real leather, this Kakadu, of course, this fancy pants Kakadu, this would be the target for many people. It's the aspirational Prado, of course, even costing 108 grand. It's one that you definitely want to pick if you do enjoy the finer things in life. Having the heated and ventilated front and rear seats, it's kind of spoil yourself, isn't it? This is pretty soft padded leather, so I'm feeling quite like royalty in this. Unfortunately, we weren't able to film very much at all while we were doing the serious off-roading stuff, but I'm just trying a little bit more of an angle along here because I have been absolutely blown away with how competent and secure feeling this is. I mean, having driven the Altitude as well, that's the full 4x4 hardcore one. I mean, it's incredibly capable with its all-terrain Toyo tires, but even on the rubber that this Kakadu and the others in the range had, it's absolutely not disgracing itself. It's been superb across many different surfaces. My takeaway is just how easy everything is. And that's what off-roading and long distance touring should be all about, isn't it? It's making sure you're comfortable and confident, and you just know that the car's gonna get you there and back. And we have hit some pretty serious ruts and river crossings at reasonable speed. It's sent a hell of a clunk through the cabin, but the car just plows out, absolutely no dramas whatsoever. you just know that Toyota will have tested this thing to breaking point and beyond, and made sure it's absolutely fit for purpose. Because 15 years is a long time between drinks. That was when the last time we got a new generation Prado, and they've put a hell of a lot of work into making sure this thing isn't going to be any worse than what's gone before, and absolutely incrementally better in every way, and it feels very much like that. A sticking point for some might actually be the ground clearance of new Prado. The GX, the GXL, they're both only 210mm ground clearance, whereas the Kakadu that I'm in, the VX and the Altitude, that's all 221mm. But fair play, we have been going to some pretty gnarly off-road sections, and there's been at no point where we've felt a serious clunk underneath, anything that might damage the base of it. So that has been surprising, despite that number that might not be as big as you'd have expected. It's certainly not had any problems out here in Kakadu. With all the all-wheel drive kit, that's all fine and good, but for safety when you're driving on the highway like this, there's obviously the regions we're testing in at the moment, and when lots of Prado owners will be going, wildlife across the road, quick stops you might have to make. There's some pretty serious ventilated rotors on new Prado. I'm just going to do a quick brake test, and that ABS, absolutely fantastic. That brought that to a stop very quickly indeed, and no lockup of course, and hauling this 2.5 ton beast up very, very quickly indeed. I'll just go again. Very smooth, very measured. It's put the warning lights on. It knows I'm having an emergency stop, so it's letting the car behind know. Really impressive stuff. While we're on the subject of safety, every Prado 250 comes with Toyota's active safety suite, and I must say it's been a little bit noisy at times when we've been off-roading. It was something we had to turn off through the steering wheel settings. You can see that through your driver display, and certainly you don't want all your sensors beeping off when you're off-roading. I know that's a huge frustration to those of you that off-road and you're permanently getting told off by sensors and cameras. So it was reasonably easy to turn all those things off. It feels very much in its element here, this Prado, especially in Kakadu form, kicking up red dust. If you haven't explored Australia and the great outback, this is absolutely the car to do it in. It feels absolutely suited. It certainly doesn't disgrace itself as an everyday family car knocking around town, but absolutely you must take your Prado out to this sort of track, these sort of surfaces, and properly test it, because just ploughing through the red earth on these lovely bits of road, incredible environment out here, and the Prado is just absolutely lapping it up. You can tell it loves being in this sort of situation, and the control on a loose dirt surface like this. I've got nice stiff suspension, I've got good firm steering through here. It really is just a lovely thing to plough along at 100 k's an hour, kicking up some red dust behind it. It's what travelling in Australia should be all about, and this is absolutely the car you'd want to do it in. I think it is a valid concern though for potential owners of new Prado, is that 110 litre diesel tank. I know if you're doing long distance touring, you don't want to be carrying too many extra jerry cans, but you'd imagine that would be the fear if things did get a little bit sticky on the fuel front, that you would like that additional range from a long range tank. But Toyota has told us that the engineering work that would be required to fit a long range tank is quite complex, so we'll have to wait and see if that's something that will potentially come in future. I'm personally not a particular fan of technology that is lane centering, where the car uses its sensors or cameras to pick up the white lines on the road and tries to keep you in the middle. And again, even though I don't particularly like it normally, I have been convinced that the Toyota system is one of the better ones, because if you're just sort of cruising along on these open highways for many, many hours, it just detects the corner coming up in front of you, and it just gives you a little bit of easy assistance just to turn through the corners. Not that it's particularly hard work or anything, but it just does give you that guidance assistance, especially if you've had a long day and are feeling a little bit tired. It just helps you along. But of course, if that's not your thing, you just turn it off through the system, and it will of course give the warning if I stray towards the white line on the side. It'll have a beep fest, tell us off. But again, it's on roads like this out in the outback that you're going to want that safety net of extra security, an extra set of eyes on the road for you. It's one of the very few reasonable speed corners that we've been able to take on our trip here. It's just coming up, so I'll just fling it in with a bit of speed. And yeah, the tyres are having a complaint, of course they are, but still felt reasonably settled, and there's decent balance here. It still feels very safe and competent. It's not about to pitch me off into the scenery. And again, it's just feels like that all-rounder that sends so many people towards Prado. That's my takeaway for this car. I'm finding it very hard to pick holes in it. There's a few details like that boot, the fuel tank perhaps not being big enough. Some might complain about the engine not having enough guts, but for me, I think Toyota's absolutely nailed the brief here. I'd love to live with one for a week around town, because I know that that's where many of you Prado owners are going to be using your vehicle, and how it exactly works in slow speed in traffic just for the daily grind. But I'd imagine it's going to be absolutely spot on for those as well. But what we've come here to Kakadu for is just to make sure it lives up to its name. It is a proper Land Cruiser Prado. They've been very keen to re-emphasize that it's part of the Land Cruiser family. It's that capable. And yeah, you've got to start looking at the 300 series going, do you need one? Is this Prado going to offer enough for you, especially with the 3.5 ton towing as well? Yeah, I'd be very keen to see how this thing operates as a tow vehicle. I've got no doubt it'll be very competent there as well. One thing potential owners might want to think about though is the running costs. You've got to remember this Prado has been built as a serious off-road vehicle and must be maintained as such. So the service intervals are every 10,000 kilometers, or key this, every 6 months. So that's worth bearing in mind. If you're not a serious off-roader, maybe something like the Kluger, which I believe is about $1,300 for the first 5 years of service, whereas this is $390 a visit, and that's every 6 months. So that is, like the Toyota Hilux, that is going to total up very quickly. So that is the trade-off for such a capable vehicle. The running costs are going to be quite hefty. But at the same time, you want to make sure these things are well maintained, and many Prados will be built to live a tough life and should be maintained as such. I wonder if it's going to stick around for 15 years like the previous generation did. It does feel like the sort of vehicle they've spent a hell of a lot of time developing, perfecting almost, and it's going to be hugely popular for Toyota. It's going to be hugely popular for Australia, and I can just see the waiting list for this thing build and build. Toyota says there's going to be a lot of expressions of interest put down. I believe we're getting 25,000 plus. That's our allocation for the first 12 months, and we're 17,000 sold already. And as soon as the reviews from we journalists come out, I'd imagine most of them are going to be highly positive. I can see the rest of them flying off the shelves very quickly. So if I can tell you anything, if you're umming and ahhing about whether to go for a Prado or not, get your name down pretty quick. Hell of a car. Love it. If I was going to lap Australia tomorrow, this is the one. So what are our initial thoughts on this new Prado 250? Well, we have taken it through Kakadu. It's not the experience most people will have owning one of these things, but it is an experience that many will have. So what's the takeaway? Well, it's certainly not cheap, is it, with that starting price of close to $80,000 to drive away. It has gone up from the old one. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. But without question, this is one hell of a talented off-road and on-road vehicle. I've been really surprised with how good the new steering is. The engine feels fantastic. That new gearbox, and especially with the 48 volt, that gives you a nice smooth transition between the gears and with the driving. So I've been very impressed with what we've done with it so far. I'd be keen to know exactly how well it goes in town for everyday life as well. We look forward to bringing you those reviews in the future. But of course, this is without question the most important car we'll be doing in 2024. I would love to know your thoughts of what we've been able to show you so far. Please leave your comments below. And as ever, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.